What up, what up? It's Grant, your sixth favorite YouTuber, baby. And in this video, I'm going to cure your social anxiety. So this video is going to be massively important because if you have social anxiety, understand two things. Number one, you ain't broken, you ain't damaged because everybody has social anxiety. Number two, understand that you can fix this. You can get over this, right? I did this. What you're about to see is literally my process mentally that I went through to go from having literal full-blown panic attacks in grocery stores to now somebody who's approached probably over 10,000 people. I have no problem starting conversations with people. Why? Because I have the right mental framework, right? So essentially what we're doing here, and guys, if you like this video, send this to your friend that needs this, right? Get this video out there because people need this information. Because if everybody knew this information, the world would be a much happier, loving place. And I think that's what we all want, right? So the core, basically in this video, at first, I'm going to give you frameworks on how to think about things. And then I'm going to give you actual reasons that you can use to get your confidence up. It's going to be amazing. And essentially what we're doing here is this. If you're socially anxious, right? Look at this right here. This is a horribly drawn scale. So this is a scale. We have a part of it with anxiety, part of it with courage, right? Now, in a perfect world, the courage one weighs a lot more than the anxiety one, meaning we want more courageous thoughts than we have anxious thoughts. And that's really all this is. If you have social anxiety, it's because there are thoughts going on in your head. You are telling yourself things. You are afraid of things, but you need to become aware of what thoughts you're thinking. And if you want to learn how to do that, I have that meditation video, but watch the meditation video after you watch this one. So look at this. All these little thoughts are adding to your anxiety. All we're going to do here is give you all these thoughts to add to your courage. And when you have more courageous thoughts than anxious thoughts, you're going to actually be able to talk to people and not have any fear eventually, right? So here's how you do it. Now, if you have social anxiety, it's super straightforward. It's super easy to cure. Here's what happens. The reason that you have social anxiety is because you have what I call a zone of familiarity, right? You have things that you're used to doing. So, look at this. You might have, this might be going shopping. This might be texting my batch Brittany. This might be going to the gym. This might be eating healthy, right? Whatever. So you have stuff that you're used to doing. Now, if you have social anxiety, here's the problem. Talking to new people is outside of that zone of familiarity, okay? You're not used to doing it. Now, here's the part that I want you to understand. Anything that's outside of your zone of familiarity, anything, you can see this gap right here, right? I wonder if I can grab the, yep, got it. See this little gap right here? Do you see that? That gap is going to be directly proportional to the emotion that you feel inside of yourself. So if you really aren't familiar with talking to people, you're going to be super nervous. You're going to be super anxious, right? And a lot of people aren't specific with the words they use because a lot of the times you're just nervous to talk to people. You don't have to call it anxiety. You can just say, hey, I'm kind of nervous. Oh, that's okay. Nervous isn't a big deal, right? So you're going to feel some type of way about it. Now, here's the thing. The question becomes, okay, Grant, how can we get talking to new people inside of our zone of familiarity? Well, if it's familiar to you, that means you've done it a bunch of times. So literally all you have to do is start talking to a bunch of new people, and then eventually the anxiety is going to go away, right? The fear, the visceral fear due to you having biological protection mechanisms in your body, there's going to always be a little fear there. But here, let me take a step back. So you have your zone of familiarity, right? Boom. And talking to new people is outside of that. Okay, pretty straightforward. So we want to get you to the point where talking to new people right here is inside of your zone of familiarity. Because when that's the case, you're going to be able to go talk to anybody. It's not going to be a big deal, right? This is where I'm at. If I'm at a mall, I can go talk to a clerk. I can go talk to a random person walking. If I'm at a bar, I can go talk to a random girl. If I'm on the street, I can go talk to a random girl. If I'm on the street, I can go talk to a random guy. I can talk to a musician who's performing. If I'm at a work environment, I can go talk to that boss and ask him questions. I can go talk to a coworker and learn about their life. I can talk to anybody. There's no problem here. Why? Because I've done it so many gosh dang times. I've done that 10,000 plus times. And when you've done anything 10,000 plus times, you don't really feel a way about it. You're like, nah, whatever. But here's the thing. Even if you do it 10,000 plus times, and this is super key to understand, you're still going to have a visceral fear there. It feels like a nervousness. Whatever that feeling that you're feeling is, that's always going to be there because you have what are called biological protection mechanisms. These are systems in your brain, right? So you think, oh, I'm weird because I have social anxiety. No, everybody has this because we all have these biological protection mechanisms. Because basically what's happening is Think about the caveman days, right? If you were in your tribe and you saw somebody from another tribe, right? You were like, oh man, maybe our tribes are warring. Maybe if I go say something, they're going to kill me. Maybe if I go say the wrong thing to them, they're going to drive a spear through my neck, right? Maybe if I say the wrong thing to the wrong person, they're going to slit my legs in my sleep. You don't know what's going to happen, right? So whatever that mechanism is that's stuck in our brain, these are old systems, even though we're in a new world. So obviously, you talking to a random person on the street most likely isn't going to result in violence most of the time, right? But again, talk to people with safety, disclaimer. But the point is, right, these mechanisms are still there. So your body's basically saying, hey, that person's in the wrong tribe of mine. Oh my gosh, this is going to be crazy. I can't really do that, right? Now, the point of me telling you that is even me, who's done, 10,000 approaches, if I'm going to talk to a new person, there is that little feeling there. That's like, that's a new person. What if they don't like me? Whatever. And then I just get over it, right? Because it feels different. It used to feel like this, like, oh, I can't talk to anybody. And now it feels like a little pebble. So if I go talk to somebody now, it's like, oh man, right? So it used to be like, and you might be here. It might have been like, oh fuck, I can't talk to anybody. I'm gonna explode, right? But now it's like, it's not really a big deal. I'm gonna go, right? So if you go to the gym, it might be like that. Where if you remember when you first started working out, it was super hard to do it, and now you can't imagine not doing it. Like now you want to do it. But then there's still some of those days that you're like, oh, I don't really want to do it. But then you make yourself go because it's a lot easier than it used to be. This is the exact same thing. It's like anything, right? So the keys here, there's 2 keys on this first section. Number 1, the reason that you're having social anxiety problems are because your arguments aren't stacked in the right direction, which we're going to touch on in a bit. Number 2, you just haven't talked to enough people. It really comes down to that. You haven't talked to enough people. So the question is, well, how come you haven't talked to enough people? Well, it's because you have social anxiety, right? So it's a negative feedback loop. And then number 2, those visceral fears that you have, you're always going to have those fears. They're never going to go away. So you don't need, less anxiety. You need more courage, if that makes sense. Now, here's something crazy. This visceral fear thing, due to biological mechanisms, you can almost reframe this. So when you're going about your day, you're naturally going to look at everybody around you as other, right? You're going to be like, oh, they're not my friend. Oh, other tribe, right? It's a tribe mentality. What you can do is you can actually brainwash yourself and you can get yourself into the state that says, hey, everybody around me is my tribe. These are all people of Earth. Everybody wants good friends, right? These are people of my tribe. And if you can brainwash yourself into that, it becomes a little bit easier, right? So you can almost short circuit this biological mechanism because what's naturally built into our brain is, oh, a person I don't know, other tribe, right? But you can consciously interfere with that process and be like, hey, that person is part of my tribe, right? It's instead of it being very competitive between people, you're on the same team. Okay, so it's like, oh, it's not them against me, right? Which is our default thing. It's, oh, hey, we're all on the same team. Oh, hey, that's my person, even though we don't know them. Oh, hey, blah, 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 right? So the big thing to take away here is that you just got to go freaking talk to more people, and it's going to get easier and easier. So you have to force yourself to do it, so stop being a little biatch, all right? Now, the law of 33%. This is super important. The law of 33%, and I have a whole video on this, but it's basically 33% of the people that you meet are going to love you no matter what. 33% of the people that you meet are going to be like, nah, indifferent. And 33% of the people that you meet are going to literally hate you no matter what you do. No matter what you do, okay? So this is super important to keep in mind because with the people that hate you no matter what you do, we do not spend time on these people. You do not double down and pander to their every wish and be like, well, maybe if I change this about myself or if I don't do this or if I just say I don't like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, then they're going to like me, right? Okay, no, I hate peanut butter. Do you like me now? No, okay, well, no, I don't like this anymore. Do you like me now? No? Okay, well, right? Instead of getting caught on that wasted time treadmill, we just say, not a good fit, and we shuck them. We shuck them away. Now, the reason that's so important to understanding with social anxiety is because not everybody's going to like you, and that's okay. That's what you want. You don't want to be friends with somebody that doesn't like you, right? So you're all worried and you're all socially anxious. You're like, well, what if they don't like me? That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Because then you know that you guys aren't a good fit. So then you're like, okay, cool, that didn't work out. Let's go find somebody who is a good fit. Right? Let's spend all of our time finding people who are naturally a good fit for us, right? And a lot of people are like, Grant, where did you learn this? Well, I was in sales, bro. I've taken over 50,000 sales calls in my life. That's an insanely high amount of sales calls, right? We were taking like 15,000 a year. It was absolutely crazy. It was so many calls, like close to 100 a day. Now, when I was running these sales calls, I was doing the same thing every time. So it didn't matter who I got on the phone, I would do the same thing, right? And even though I didn't change anything, here's what I noticed. Some people really loved me just being myself. Some people were like, nah, I don't really care about this guy. And then some people literally just hated me and I triggered them. And I was doing the same thing every time. So I realized, oh my God, right? I'm not doing anything different. The reactions that I'm getting are because of these people. So, and guess what? The ones that didn't like me, I wouldn't want to sell them anything anyway. I wouldn't want them to be my client anyway, because they're going to be a freaking nightmare. Because if I sold that person that hated me something, well, then I was still going to be me after the sale, right? So then if we ever talked after I sold them something, they were going to be like, no, right? And then I would have dealt with a headache for the rest of my life until I just cut them out. So you're all anxious that somebody's not going to like you. Bro, if they don't like you, that is literally a blessing. That is a good thing, okay? So we're taking steps in the right direction. We're going to keep going. So what have we covered so far? We've covered that the reason that you're socially anxious is because you just haven't talked to enough people. You haven't acquired the skill yet. You haven't put talking to new people inside of your zone of familiarity, acquired a skill. It is just a skill that you need to learn, like tying your shoes, right? Here's an example. Let's say you've never tied your shoes before in your entire life. Right? You're 35 years old, you've never tied your shoes. Now you're on a public stage, okay? You're on a public stage and somebody says, hey man, you're on a stage right now. You're going to tie your shoes right now for $2 million, okay? But if you don't do it correctly, we're going to shoot you in the head, all right? Well, if you've never tied your shoes before, you're going to be freaking anxious because you're like, oh my God, I've literally never done this before. I don't know if I'm going to mess up, right? You're going to be super anxious. And then you're going to be like, okay, I can't really do this because you're going to be super anxious, right? That's how it is. But let's say you're you and you've tied your shoes 100,000 times in your life at this point, right? Now you're on the stage again. And they're like, hey, little guy, we're going to give you $2 million if you can tie your shoes right now in public. But if you can't do it, we're going to shoot you in the face. Do you want to take that deal? And you're like, is this a joke? Like I've literally tied my shoe 100,000 times, right? You're going to be super confident and then you tie your shoes and you get all the money and you survive, right? The point of that is if you've done something, you're going to be confident in it. If you haven't done it enough, you're going to be anxious and nervous about it. So the confidence comes from the competence. It comes from the doing the thing. It comes from the talking to people a lot of times. So you just have to get yourself over the first few initial humps and realize at first it's going to be really like, I'm talking to new people. But then after that, it's not going to be anything. You're like, it's not even going to be a big deal, right? It's going to first feel like this, and then it's going to feel like this. And I have another video on that entire process, but that's basically the point, right? So we've covered that the reason that you're socially anxious is because you just haven't done it enough times, and that the law of 33% states that, guess what? You're going to talk to people, they're not going to like you anyway, grow up and deal with it. That's literally it. And if they don't like you, it's a blessing because you're like, oh, I know I don't want to talk to this person, right? What you don't want to do, again, is that double down process. There's a video on that. Let's move on. So another reason why you're anxious is because you have completely unrealistic standards, brother, right? You got completely unrealistic standards on how the conversation needs to go. Right? You think you need the perfect thing to say. You think you need the ultimate witty line to make them fall in love with you forever. And here's the reason why. You got no self-esteem. I'm sorry to be the first one to tell you this, but you literally have no self-esteem. Because think about the paradigm that you're coming from. The reason that you have unrealistic standards is because you have no self-esteem. Here's what I mean by that. What does somebody who is unconfident think? They think, oh, I'm not good enough as myself, so I need that amazing, perfect thing to say, so they think I'm cooler than I am, because who I am isn't good enough. Well, I need that ultimate witty line to make them go, wow, because the line's amazing and I'm not, so I need them to think I'm actually more amazing than I am, because I'm not good enough. Who I am is my own person, right? That's what you're coming from. Now, here's what I think. Here's how a confident person thinks. They think, hey, I'm super awesome and amazing with who I am. I have so much value to give the world. So I could say the dumbest thing to this person. It doesn't matter because they're going to like me anyway. That's where I come from. So literally I could walk up to somebody and be like, hey man, do you like my mug? It's really cool, right? It says my father, my hero, right? For my future kids that I don't have yet. My son's going to watch this video on YouTube when he's like 8 and he's going to be like, Dad, thanks for making that video, right? Because I'm thinking long term. Anyway, that was a little tangent. But the point is, I could go up to somebody and be like, hey, oh, check out my mug. And they're like, oh, that's a cool mug. I'm like, right? Is your father your hero? And they're like, well, no, actually, my dad threw me in a closet when I was 6 and put his boot on my face and started spanking me. And I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. Are you okay now? And they're like, yeah, I kind of got over it, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, is that why you're here? And they're like, yeah, that's why I moved, right? It's a whole conversation about something random like a mug. The point is, I understand I can say anything to somebody and it literally doesn't matter because I have self-esteem. I have self-worth. I could literally go up to somebody and be like, hey, chicken? And they're like, what? And I'm like, what? And then we have a conversation about that. So understand that the reason you're socially anxious is because you have completely unrealistic standards. So you need to accept the fact, Becky, that you are enough as you are now, and that just being yourself is your unique zone of genius. Just being yourself is your gift to the world. And this isn't woo-woo, right? Because think about it. There's 7 billion plus people in the world. Is anybody exactly like you? No, nobody is exactly like you. And guess what? There's some person out there in the world that if you and them met, you guys would be best freaking friends. So it's your obligation. It's your moral obligation to talk to as many people as possible to find your amazing friend match, to find your amazing life partner match, because they are out there. There's somebody out there for everybody. You just need to find them, right? And guess what? We're going to keep going here. Seneca, right? Seneca, a famous philosopher who wrote Groundless Fears, one of his famous letters, right? He said, there are more things that frighten us than actually crush us. We suffer more often in imagination than we do in reality. Now think about it. You're socially anxious to go talk to people. Every time that you've talked to people in the past, what's happened? Well, you probably got forced into the situation because you were freaking out, and then you started opening up to people, and then you probably made a lot of really good friends, right? Like you went to that new orientation, and you're like, oh, I don't know anybody. I'm really socially anxious. And then some social person was like, hey, cool shirt. And you're like, oh, thanks. And then you made a best friend, right? So literally every time that you've ever done it, it's turned out positive. So like literally, why are you still anxious? You're living on old programming that you've had when you were a kid. And part of that is that visceral fear that we all have due to biological protection mechanisms, right? We're always fighting our biology, meaning we can be like, I don't need food, but then at some point we're going to get hungry, right? Because we're stuck in a little flesh vehicle on a floating rock in the middle of freaking nowhere. That's just how it is. So in the same way, you're always going to have this resistance. So again, what are we doing here? We're stacking arguments on the courage side because those biological protection mechanisms are always going to give us anxious thoughts. They're always going to give us fearful thoughts because that's how we are as a human. Why is it there? Because if one bad thing happens, you're done, right? You're KO'd. If we didn't have brains that were like, hey, be careful talking to other people, right? Back in the day, we just wander up to a random tribe and be like, hey, right? And then we spear to the neck and we're done. The game is over. Right? So we have those mechanisms to protect us. So understand that they're just here to protect you, but now they don't really serve the purpose as much as they used to because we're in we're in the earth that has technology and different countries that usually most of the time get along for the most part, if you get what I'm saying, right? So the mechanisms are there to protect you. They're not bad. So you're like, oh, I feel so anxious. I think I'm weird and I'm a bad person. No, it's just a mechanism that everybody has, bro. You're taking it personally. We all have this. So disassociate that mechanism from yourself and realize it's there to protect you. Grow the F up and start talking to people. I'm going to slam my hands on the ground because I'm getting angry. But the reason they're there is because, listen, you could have 100 conversations. Okay, cool. You have one bad confrontation that ends up with a spear in your neck, you're dead. So the negative risk is a lot higher than the positive benefit, and that's how all these mechanisms in our body are. So you have unrealistic standards. You have to lower the standard of conversation. Making friends and life is made up of boring conversation, right? Hey, bro, how you been? Oh, I've been good. What have you been doing? Working, lifting weights. Oh, cool. How's your day? Right? That's usually how it is. And if you're a little bit funnier, you can make the conversation funny, but life is just boring conversation. That's how it is. So you're putting all this weight on saying the perfect thing to say and getting them to like you, when in reality, it doesn't even matter. Again, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So literally, I think I already cured your social anxiety, because once you realize that, hey, this is my biological mechanism freaking out and I just got to do it anyway, right? This isn't because I'm broken inside. A lot of the times that can cure it. But you're still going to feel that anxious feeling when you actually have to go talk to people because it's in your body. So then you have to have all these arguments to be like, oh yeah, da-da-da, and then you just go, okay? You just shut off your brain and you just go. It's like if you've ever been cliff jumping. So if I'm going to go talk to somebody new, I basically, if I start feeling that social anxiety in myself, that I'm like, oh, I'm anxious to talk to somebody new. Or let's say it's a girl, right? There's a really pretty girl I see in a grocery store, and I'm kind of nervous to talk to her. I don't sit there and be like, well, I'm this and that. No, I just shut it off and I go. It's like jumping off a cliff, right? If you've been cliff jumping, you're like standing on the really high cliff, and you're like, oh my God, this is higher than I've ever jumped. I don't know if I've ever jumped this high before. And you're like, and then eventually you're just like, okay, and you just jump, right? And you're kind of like, as you do it, you have a little out-of-body experience. It's the same thing. So let's say there's that pretty girl down the street, right? And I see her and I'm like, okay, I'm kind of anxious, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, oh, I'm in my head again, right? So I don't worry about the anxiety. I feel it in my body and I'm like, oh, this is just that mechanism kicking in, right? I'm going to talk to a pretty girl and she could have a boyfriend who owns 700 spears and he's ready to kill me. But guess what? That's not really true because that's just my body freaking out. So I just do it anyway. I'm like, okay, well, there's that familiar thing that is freaking out. That's the mechanism going off. I'm just going to do it anyway. That's basically where you have to get to, right? So like you want to go make a friend somewhere and you're like, okay, I want to go talk to that person. And then your mechanism is kicking in, right? Because let's say it's a pretty girl. Well, you don't know if the big alpha male lurking in the corner is her boyfriend and he's got 300 spears ready to all pinpoint you in the neck, right? That's your body. Your body's thinking that. It's like, oh, be careful, right? So you have to be aware of that and go do it anyway. It's really that simple. So your body's trying to protect you, but you're going to fight it all the time. And then let's say you're at some college orientation, you want to go make a friend, right? So same kind of thing's happening. You're like, oh, what if there's somebody out there that's going to hurt me? There's a new person, right? And your mechanism's going off, and you're like, oh, this is just a mechanism. I'm going to go talk to somebody. So you're detaching yourself from the emotion. You're detaching yourself from your biology, and you're doing it anyway. Now, we're going to keep going on stacking reasons to give you more courage. We have the spotlight effect, right? What is that? Well, the spotlight effect is when you walk into the grocery store and you think everybody's looking at you. Oh my God, everybody's looking at me because I'm so important and I'm so narcissistic and I'm in the grocery store and they're all making fun of me. And if I make any mistakes, like if I drop my phone or if I grab the wrong apple the wrong way, they're all going to laugh at me and make fun of me, right? You're a narcissist. Let's cut to the chase of it. So understand that you really don't matter. Nobody's even looking at you anyway because everybody else has a spotlight effect. Right? Everybody else has a spotlight effect. Why do we have the spotlight effect? Again, it's to protect us. So once you realize that literally all the sticking points that we have in life are usually there for our own survival and our own benefit, you become friends with your body, Becky. So with the spotlight effect, understand that everybody else is focused on themselves anyway, right? So when you're talking to somebody, right, you're like, oh, so here's how it feels. You go up and you meet somebody new. You're talking to a girl, you're talking to whoever, and in your head you're like, oh my God, if I mess up, they're going to hate me and expel me from the group. If I say one thing incorrectly, oh my God, they're going to hate me forever and I'm going to be expelled, and then because of the internet, they're going to put it on the internet and I'm going to be hated forever, right? That's how it feels. But in reality, you can mess up 100 times when you're talking to that person. It literally doesn't matter. So you can literally mumble in conversation and be like, or stammer around in conversation. The person is really just thinking about themselves anyway. So you could do anything and they're not even going to notice. So again, you have the freedom to mess up 100 times in conversation and still make the friend. You have the freedom to mess up 100 times in conversation and still get the girl's number. You can mess up. There's wiggle room here. It's not like, oh, if I make one little error, then I'm not going to blow up, right? It's again, that's an unrealistic standard. That's an unrealistic expectation. We all have the spotlight effect. You can actually mess up, okay? And also, the 90-year-old test. If you want to go make that friend or talk to the girl, in that moment, think this. Think, hey, if I'm 90 years old, would I care that I got rejected in this situation? No? Okay, I'm going to go do it. Right? Or, hey, if I'm 90 years old and what if this was my potential lover? What if this was my potential best friend? Do you think I would have regret at 90 that I didn't do this right now? Yeah, I would. Okay, I have to do it. Boom. And also, you're literally going to die, bro. You're going to die. Everybody that you love is going to die. Or your whole existence is going to completely be erased off the face of the earth, right? And even if it wasn't, even if you had your legacy, like Seneca, for example, well, guess what? One day the earth is going to get eaten by the sun, and now the whole earth is gone. Well, Grant, Elon Musk will have taken us to Mars by then. Okay, well, one day the universe is going to fold on itself like an accordion, and then we're all going to be gone anyway, right? Like I said in the other video, the only hope that we have is to hop dimensions. Okay, well, if we can hop dimensions, then I'll have a legacy. Bro, just freaking talk to the girl, bro. Stop doing these mental gymnastics. Just go have the conversation with the guy in the grocery store. Just go make the friend at your orientation. It's not a big deal, right? Why are we getting to the metaphysics of the universe? Why are you going to battle me on if the universe is going to accordion itself or if the sun's going to eat the earth when you can't even talk to freaking Jimmy at the grocery store, right? So like, bro. And then also, You got to minimize these things. I call this perspective jumping, right? So if you want to talk to somebody, you have to realize how insignificant it is, okay? Because if you're freaking out because you're socially anxious, it's because you're a little narcissist. You're like, oh, me, 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 me. Oh, I'm scared. Oh, I'm afraid. Oh, me, 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 right? Your whole focus is on yourself. So take your focus off of yourself for a second. Realize that you're literally a speck of nothing in a field of nothing in a sea of nothing. And then once you realize that, it gets a lot easier because you're like, oh, right? I'm literally a speck of nothing in the universe. I'm 1 in 7 billion people, right? And then out of those 7 billion people, they're probably having, let's say, 30 conversations a day. Now there's 300 billion conversations happening every single day. Do you think out of 300 billion conversations happening on the world every single day, your one little approach in Lowe's is going to freaking matter? No, it's not going to matter. It's a speck of nothing. And guess what? Everybody that you talk to wants good friends as well. Everybody wants good friends. But guess what? Everybody's too afraid to make good friends just like you are. Everybody's too afraid to talk to that person that they find attractive just like you. So it's your moral obligation, if you came across this video, to have courage for both of you. Right? If you see somebody and you're like, dang, I want to make friends with that person, it's your moral obligation to go talk to that person. So you need enough courage for both of you guys. Because if they're scared and you're scared and you guys never talk, that's a beautiful relationship that you'll never have. Like literally, that's an amazing friendship or an amazing relationship that you will never get to experience on your one life in this crazy thing that we call life. How crazy is that? You're literally, because you're so in your own head, oh, I'm socially anxious, I can't, right? Oh, I'm socially anxious. I'm scared. Oh my God, I'm narcissist. I'm depressed. I'm anxious, right? Because you're so in your head, focused on yourself. It's like you have one of those little mirrors every day and you're just looking at yourself every second, right? That's literally you. So take the mirror off of yourself, put it on everybody else in the universe, realize that you're nothing, and then just go have these conversations. It's really that simple. So the key takeaways here are the reason that you're socially anxious is literally just because you haven't talked to enough people. It's a skill that you develop over time. It's like, oh, I've never lifted a weight before, but I'm really mad that I can't bench 315. Well, yeah, you've literally never lifted a weight, bro. So maybe in 3 years you can lift 315, but not right now because you've never done it. In the same way, you're like, oh, I don't know why I'm socially anxious talking to people. It's because you haven't done it yet. You got to go build the skill, right? So literally go talk to 100 new people that you don't know and you're not going to be that anxious anymore, right? Or you can get to, my level where I've talked to 10,000 new people and now it's like, it's not a big deal because I've done it so many times. It's like tying my shoes on that stage. I'm like, oh, I've tied my shoes 100,000 times. Yeah, this isn't a problem. Oh, I've talked to all these different people in all these different situations. Isn't a problem. So understand social anxiety is something that you can cure. Social anxiety is something that you can get over simply by doing it. And all these are arguments to get you to frickin' do it. Okay? So, and again, you don't even have to not be socially anxious to talk. You're like, oh, I'm socially anxious. That means I can't talk to people. No, that's not a requirement, right? I'll go talk to people while I'm socially anxious. Guess what? It doesn't matter. So you don't have to feel amazing to go talk to people anyway. Make a commitment to yourself. Say, hey, I'm kind of socially anxious, but I'm going to go do that thing anyway. Hey, I feel like I'm going to have a freaking panic attack in public. I'm going to go talk to people anyway. It doesn't matter. Social anxiety isn't going to kill you. Social anxiety isn't going to hurt you. It's not a big deal. It's literally just you in your head freaking out. That's all it is, right? So it's not a big deal at all. So stop making it a big deal. And I'm going to make this whole video because people think it's a big deal, but literally it's not even a big deal. Like you just go talk to people. When you were a little kid, you would just talk to people naturally, right? You were a friendly kid probably. Maybe you weren't, but whatever. So that's really the video. If this isn't cure your social anxiety, you can be like, well, Grant, you missed this, right? And then tell me. And then next time I explain it, I'll incorporate your objection into it. So yeah, follow me on Instagram @Grant Lannon and hope you like the video. Deuces.